Hi, Kristen.
Well, good morning. It's 10 o'clock and I'd like to call this West Coast Committee meeting to order. I'd first like to recognize and express our appreciation to the Hoopachet and Shuswap First Nations for our ability to work on their territories today and conduct our business in a good way. For the notice to attendees and the delegates that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube on the Regional District website, very exciting website, by the way. And since we do have quorum, which is great. So I'd just like to introduce, in case there would be any people from the public present, if we could do some introductions. And I'm just going to look to my screen first. And I see Veda. If you would like to introduce yourself, that would be wonderful.
Thank you. Veda Siga, representative for the Area C.
And Marilyn.
Good morning. Marilyn McEwen, Mayor of Ucluelet.
And Kirsten.
Morning. Kirsten Johnson, representing Toquet Nation.
Great. And we have some one staff in the room and then a couple and one online that I see, or two online. You introduce yourselves today.
Good morning, Heather Zenner, Manager of Administrative Services.
Good morning, Terry Fong, Chief Financial Officer.
Great, thank you. If I could, I'll move from the chair. We'll approve the agenda as written today. Seconded by Director Siga. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, motion carried. Are there any declarations, any conflicts of interest today? Seeing none, we'll move on, and I'll move from the chair again that the minutes of the West Coast Committee meeting held on June 5th, 2024 be adopted. Thank you for seconding, Director Johnson. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, motion carried. So this morning, I do note on our agenda that 5A is Samantha Hackett presenting from the West Coast Multiplex Society. She's not here, and I did speak to her last night. She said she would be here in person. Don't see her online either. So, and I'll look to Heather, and if Seth, I see Seth online. Seth, if you're prepared and willing to do so, we could switch up. Well. Oh, no, I thought it was Samantha walking in, but it's not. It is Jenny. Okay, great.
We'll do Seth first.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So Seth, if you would like, we have Seth Wright, Senior Manager of Government Relations, BC Transit, regarding an update on plan to introduce BC Transit service to the West Coast.
Great. Thank you so much, Chair Steer. Let me just look to share my screen. I'm quite excited to be able to present this work to you. This has been many years in the making, and so very keen to be able to share a progress update on where we're at in this moment. It looks like you should be able to see my PowerPoint screen. Please nod if you can. Okay, I will proceed. So this is an update of where we're at right now. My team is working busily to set ourselves up for success in March 1st of 2025, which is when we plan to have the first BC Transit Day of Service in your communities. I'm going to speak today briefly, give myself an introduction, speak a little bit about BC Transit's funding and governance model. You might be familiar with it, so it'll be pretty quick. But and then I'm going to talk about what the BC Transit service is going to look and feel like to the folks that are going to use it across the West Coast region, and then I'll identify a few next steps of where we're headed. So I'm the Senior Manager of Government Relations. I work across a wide breadth of subject matter experts at BC Transit. I'm a generalist. I come from a background as a transit planner, before that as a local government land use planner. I'm excited to be able to work in this role, and especially excited to be able to work on the setting up of a service on the West Coast. I also work with a bunch of other local governments, largely regional districts, but also a few municipalities up and down Vancouver Island, excluding the Victoria region. BC Transit, as you're likely aware, is a Crown corporation that provides transit service across the province of British Columbia. It's fairly unique in North America and provides service to over 130 communities through 80 transit systems in partnership with 58 local governments, providing quite a lot of rides. It says here 50 million. I think that number is even higher today. And we have over 1,200 or nearly 1,200 buses across the province. The model is laid out in the BC Transit Act, is effectively a partnership model where the provincial government sets some broad public policy objectives and provides the lion's share of funding for transit. And then we work in partnership with local governments, yourself as a regional district, as well as municipalities. And we work in partnership through contracts with local operating companies across the province. Historically, our operating companies have been a variety of for-profit and not-for-profit organizations. Increasingly, they are more professional transit for-profit companies, is sort of a trend we're seeing as we increase our standards and mandate higher professional standards in terms of mandating good quality service delivery on the roads. This model in the slide identifies what the responsibilities of local government are. The BC Transit Act primarily and principally envisioned that transit would be delivered through municipalities. The reality today is that we have transit through a number of regional districts across the province. So because of the way the BC Transit Act was envisioned and set up, it requires a fair amount of collaboration and partnership through the regional district to municipalities, who are your road authorities, and in the case of the rural areas, through the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure to set up bus stops and that sort of thing on the roads. But fundamentally, the local government establishes funding, sets routes and service levels, sets fares and manages the sale of fare products, establishes and maintains bus stops, shelters, and amenities, obviously through the respective road authorities, as I'm speaking about, carries land use planning, and that land use planning function is also carried through your municipalities as well. So that's another partnership. Determines service expansion priorities and approves agreements as we've already done and will continue to move forward to do. We as a Crown corporation allocate the provincial funding, plan the transit system. So we have a team of transit planners that provide support and identify this work. And so in 2020, there was a robust service plan developed for the West Coast service that we're using as our blueprint and modifying through conversations with your staff as we move forward. We facilitate, my colleague in operations facilitates the operation through managing those contracts with local operating companies. We procure and own the fleet, so we own all the buses and we manage that through a team of fleet engineers to ensure that our buses are meeting good standards and able to carry people comfortably to their destinations. We have a marketing team that produces the rider's guides, manages the website, and increasingly and importantly provides service through apps so people can plan their trips and see where the buses are in real time. And then we have all these. So I'm gonna be blunt and honest and say more boring professional services, obviously, that we need to maintain as a Crown corporation. Finally, the operating company obviously delivers the specified transit service on the road, but they also hire, train, and provide the drivers to deliver that service, as well as typically the mechanics, but not always. Sometimes that's provided through third-party contract. But we are looking in the ACRD as doing that through the operating company. They also manage the labor relations for those drivers and mechanics. They collect fare revenue on behalf of the ACRD. I'll speak about fare revenue in a moment. They provide day-to-day customer service, so lost and found when people leave things on the bus. How can I get from point A to point B if people have difficulty reading the schedule, that sort of thing. And sometimes we ask them to go tell us how many people are riding this route at this time, and they help us with that. So obviously it's really for transit to work well, it's a partnership between the three of us. And we're able to do that through effective partnership. Shifting gears a little bit right now, I just wanted to identify what the funding formula is through the BC Transit Act. This is set in the BC Transit Act that says conventional transit is funded at a 46.69% rate through the province. And that means that the municipal share, as it's identified in the BC Transit Act, or the local government share, as it would be in this case through the ACRD, is responsible for the balance of the 53.31%. However, a portion of that is made up from revenue from the fares. And so the revenue at the fare box then gets applied 100% against that 53.31 cost. And the balance of that is allocated or applied against your property taxes. Where Handy Dart service is provided, as it is in the Port Alberni area, the funding formula from the province is even more generous, and the province pays just over 2/3 of the cost of that, recognizing that that is a more expensive service to operate, and the community can benefit more from having that higher share from the province. Just a little bit of self-promotion here in terms of what BC Transit is able to provide in terms of a service, rather than having just individually transit services operated by local governments without the support of a broader Crown corporation. When we look at BC Transit systems to similar small, medium, and large systems across the country, we see that the benefit of having a bunch of subject matter experts on buying our buses, on managing schedules, on managing routes, it provides good value and tends to outperform other transit systems in the province, so, or other transit systems in the country, I should say. Now formally more shifting gears and looking forward and looking specifically at the system. What are we doing in the next few months? Right now, we're looking at amending your annual operating agreement. So that's a little bit of paperwork that happens in the background. So we're building out some updated budgets to say this is what we're looking at for our next fiscal year, which begins April 1st of 2025. We are looking at finalizing some schedules in the next couple months. We have some draft work. My scheduler just sent me an email this morning saying that work is well underway. And then once those schedules are completed, we will be developing a rider's guide and marketing materials to promote the service. And we already have a fairly comprehensive marketing and communications plan to really promote the service. And we use all forms of both traditional legacy media as well as social media and any form of communication we can get. And we'd like to work with you to get information out through your channels to be able to effectively promote the start of BC Transit service, so people know what the schedules are and can get on the bus when we start up. In January, we'll get bus stop signs ordered and get them delivered in time to post them at the stops. We're working on bilingual and trilingual signs. So within Parks Canada, we have a request for English and French, and then we're looking at having English and New Channelmouth signs on the respective reserve lands and the stops within First Nations communities. So really excited about that. That's a first for BC Transit, and that's a commitment that I'm really excited about moving towards. And then we're working, we'll obviously prioritize getting all of the materials delivered and installed in February, and then March 1st is when we're aiming to set up service. What does the service look like? We're looking at introducing service 7 days a week, as you currently already have it. We have identified a service span of approximately 6 in the morning till 9 at night. We understand that early morning service is not as popular on the West Coast. So we'll monitor that and see if we understand that that the late night service is more popular from the ridership information we have received from your staff. We will look at a seasonal reduction for winter from November to April. This is sort of what we see in other tourist-oriented communities, that there's slightly less ridership through the winter months, and so there's an opportunity to scale up service for the summer and scale it back a little bit for the winter. We're looking at about 16 to 18 round trips per day, hourly service at peak times. We'll have a scheduled peak of 3 buses, so 3 buses operating at the same time during a large portion of the day. And the service will be following the current ACRD routing with 1 or 2 minor exceptions that we're currently working on formalizing and getting through our internal approval processes. The total annual service budget is 7,500 hours, which I think is significantly more than what is currently being rolled out on the road. So it will be a higher service level with more trips than you currently see in the schedule. The buses that we will be providing will all be brand new 2024 ARBOC buses. They're sort of known as the Handy Dart buses by most people in the province, but they provide community transit to folks. They do have a ramp. They're fully wheelchair accessible and also mobility device accessible. The last couple of years, we've added seat belts to all of them based on best practice in the industry, and also just in the interest of safety. In addition to seat belts, there are also I'm going to flip forward to the next slide because I'm really excited about this. As someone that used to travel on transit with my young children, there are 5-point harnesses for folks that need to carry infants on the bus. There's a couple of those on the bus, so that's a great option for people with young kids. There are 2 wheelchair positions and 2 of those integrated child seats. And there's a bike rack with spots for 2 bikes, as we have on all of our transit buses across the province. I would note, however, that due to the engineering of these buses, the bikes obscure the headlights of these buses. So one of the challenges with light duty buses, with these smaller buses, is that we can't have bikes on the bus after dark because they obscure and ultimately we can't get enough lights out to the front. We've looked at all sorts of options like repositioning the headlights and haven't been able to engineer a solution at this time that's cost effective and reasonable. And so that's a prohibition we have on the use of the bike racks, but they are providing service throughout the sunlit hours of the day. This is a bit of a technical schematic of the interior layout, and it shows the additional seats that fold up and can fold down for the wheelchair position if there's wheelchairs on the bus. Looking towards fare payment, we've identified that we do want to have both cash and electronic fare payment options. Our fare payment technology is slightly different than your fare payment technology that you've put on the buses operating in the community today. Our provider is a company called UMO, and so there is a UMO card, or you can download the UMO app to your smartphone. The technology is pretty easy. I use it on my app on my phone and as the app, and I hold up my phone to that validator that says daily cap reached, and that enables me to use my pass to get on the bus. So we'll work with the ACRD on formalizing a fare management process to collect the fare on the buses and get that to the ACRD office or ACRD bank accounts. We are also working on installing technology on the buses to ensure that people can use any app for trip planning, whether it's Google Maps, UMO trip planning, or Transit app. I will say that they all provide real-time data showing exactly the trip time. So if the bus is running 5 minutes late or 2 minutes early, which we obviously try to avoid, but sometimes it happens. These apps will tell you exactly when the bus is going to arrive at your stop, which is phenomenal and just makes the wait so much more enjoyable if you know that you haven't missed the bus and the bus is on its way. But I would say that for a nerd like me that likes to see exactly where the bus is on a map, I prefer the transit app, and that's the official app of BC Transit for trip planning. UMO app is obviously our official fare app, so they provide slightly different purposes. But if you prefer to use one app, you can use one app in it, and both. In fact, all three apps will tell you if you're grooving out to some music or just spacing out. It'll tell you in 2 stops your stop is coming up and when to get off. So they're great functionality. That's my presentation. I'm more than happy to answer any questions, and thanks so much for your time this morning.
Great. Thank you, Seth, very much. I think there's been great anticipation of your presentation today. So I can already see, I'm looking up to the committee members and I can already see hands going up. Veda, did you have question or comments for Seth?
Thank you very much. That looks like a really positive move for us on the West Coast, and I'm looking forward to it. I've got 2 questions. We have a community of about 50 houses and then several houses along the highway close by out at Millstream. And currently we don't have a bus stop. Traditionally, the school bus did have a shelter at Millstream and picked up kids from the area at the top of the hill. And I'm just wondering if you're going to try to get the Millstream stop added to your stops. And secondly, can you use the credit card to tap with your apps like you do in Vancouver?
Yeah, absolutely. And through Chair Steer to Director Siga, and pardon me if I'm mispronouncing your name. I'm happy to answer both those questions in terms of Millstream. That's been a conversation that I've been having in the last couple of weeks with your staff person, Manager Kunderman, about Millstream. We didn't initially include this because we looked at the current service, but we have looked to add it. And so our safety and training team is right now just in the process of reviewing the proposed stop locations to service, or stop location to service the Millstream neighborhood. So I don't expect at this time there to be any issues with adding a stop to service that neighborhood. I think that is something we should be able to accomplish. It adds about 2 minutes of travel time, but that's not a concern. We've already done the math and are confident with that. In terms of your second question, we have been working to enable UMO technology to take both credit and debit cards in the future. However, we've had some challenges with Moneris in terms of them changing their technological specifications for how our technology would dovetail with their technology. I don't understand the full nuance or detail of that, but I will say that we had hoped by December to have that technology online. We don't have a clear sense of when that's going to be possible, but we're still aiming to get it done within the next year, but it depends a little bit on compatibility between the technologies. And so that is something we're working on fairly actively and are excited to be able to roll it out once we've figured out the technological questions within that.
Great, thank you. And I see Marilyn has her hand up. Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. Could you share what your fares will be and whether there will be a free fare for children at a certain age? And will there be a discount for seniors like we have right now?
Thank you. And again, through Chair Steer to Director McEwen, in terms of fare, based on conversations with your staff, we are looking to set the fares in accordance with the fares that you have established for your existing service. BC Transit has a program where the province has requested and mandated effectively to to the extent that they can, that fares be free for children under 12. And so that is effectively a BC Transit program that the province funds and subsidizes to a small degree or a modest degree to offset the reduction in fare revenue. So that's something we can incorporate, and then we're looking to align fares with your existing fares. I have had some conversations with our UMO team and our fare team, and they've reviewed the fares and identified that there's no concerns with aligning the fares to the fares that you currently have.
Great, thank you.
Right now, look to the committee on the screen. I don't see any other hands up. I have a couple of comments, and I first wanted to start out by saying, Seth, I really need to give credit to the staff here at the ACRD, and I'm looking to Jenny in the room, and of course Eddie's online there as well. When this service, let's just say, was disrupted back in the day, our staff turned around. The board recognized clearly this was a service that we'd been working hard on, that we needed on the West Coast, and staff without hesitation jumped in to make it work in the timeframes, I would say in an expedited timeframe. So I cannot thank our staff for recognizing that and doing the work, the hard work that came to fruition, as well as the communities that were involved. So with that, I have a couple of questions. One, it's around, of course, funding. And one of the concerns, of course, on the coast is the cost of the service to the taxpayer and being borne there. And in the funding formula, I believe it is through legislation, but one of the questions I did have, as was pointed out in your fare breakdown, how it is allocated through the custom service and the conventional service and the percentages that were laid out. I'm wondering if there's the possibility of a conversation where that split is the same for the conventional as it is for the custom service, which would reduce, of course, costs to the taxpayers on the course. That's we'll start with that one and see if that's a possibility. And within that conversation as well, we've had conversations about the ability to, is there any way to have input into how the province allocates that funding formula between in this case, the regional district and the province slash BC Transit?
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Chair Steer. I'm going to be a little bit careful about the way I frame this. There's certain sensitivities with the way I speak to this, but I will say, in terms of the way the service has been set up, it's been set up as a fully conventional system. There may be opportunity for a conversation down the road on blending it and recognizing that the service provides a really high value of use to folks that might have mobility impairment or cognitive impairment, and the drivers may be put in a position where they're operating something closer to a what we call a custom transit, or what is in other jurisdictions called a paratransit model, which is what our classic handy dart service is. And so there might be an opportunity to look at the funding cost share and find a middle ground between the custom transit funding model and the conventional funding model. So that's, I would say, an open conversation that we can have in the coming years. It will help to have some data and some informed evidence to have that conversation. So once we have 6 months or a year at least of ridership data, and can have a bit of an informed conversation on what we're seeing on who's actually riding the bus, that will be able to help that conversation along. I would say that those funding formulas are fairly enshrined in the legislation, and there hasn't been an appetite to really change those formulas for quite a long time. It's my sense that that wouldn't be a conversation that would be likely to achieve much success in the interim, based on where we're sitting financially more broadly. And I'll just leave it at that.
And thank you, Seth, for that. And just maybe a follow-up, because one of the concerns, or better stated, we want to increase ridership, and we want to make it as accessible as possible. And so, of course, with that revenue, we appreciate the 100% revenues coming in directly for us. At the same time, when we're looking at senior discounts, those fares reductions to zero in some of those age categories, obviously that affects that revenue stream. So that's where we would look to that support and seeing a much more a more balanced equation in terms of the funding. Because as you know, we want to increase that ridership. We want to create lifelong transit users on the West Coast, and we can only anticipate an expansion of that service in the future. So I'll leave it there. I see Marilyn has her hand up. I've got a couple more, but I'll look to Marilyn unless her hand is still up. But I see a hand up for Marilyn. Please go ahead.
Thank you. You mentioned ridership data, and I'm wondering if you would be willing to share that data with us, perhaps on a quarterly basis, just so that we get a sense of what peak hours are and where the riders are generating from. I'll start with that one, and then I've got one more.
Yeah, absolutely. And through the chair, Director McEwen, of course, we're happy to share ridership data when we start collecting that. So beginning with our service on March 1st, our buses will be equipped with automatic passenger counter data or units, which are infrared units typically above the doors that sort of create a curtain where they count people as they walk in and get off the bus, and they're geolocated, which means that they identify exactly what stop they get on and off at. So we should have some good data, and it'll say what trips are most popular and all sorts of things like that. So I will be happy to work with our transit planner to provide you quarterly data.
Great. And my second question was about surfboards. Is there a spot for surfboards on the bus?
Yeah, and again, through Chair Steer, the surfboard question has been an extensively discussed question at BC Transit. BC Transit's one of its scale of economies that we're able to achieve is the fact that we're able to move buses on an as-needed basis around the province. This requirement is for a number of reasons, but as you can imagine, with running nearly 1,200 buses, occasionally there are motor vehicle incidents where a bus suffers body damage or sometimes mechanical damage that requires fairly major overhaul or even replacement at times. So to be able to continue to operate full service in a community, we sometimes have to move buses around. We also have to do this for a variety of other more minor reasons. But ultimately, that requirement to maintain the flexibility of moving buses around has presented surfboards as a bit of a challenge, and there has been no eyes to see how we could do this in a way that would be safe and accommodate the passenger loads that we expect to see and be able to incorporate surfboards. I have had a conversation with the District of Tofino about their Tofino shuttle, which obviously operates for the 2 months of the summer, and they indicated that they don't see more than a dozen surfboards a day on their service, and they don't consider it actually to be as significant as a ridership driver as they would expect. So from that, well, surfboards have been a big conversation, and we've pushed hard and tried to entertain the topic. We haven't had much success, and there's not an ability to find out how we could accommodate them. But I understand that in fact today there's not that much transportation demand for surfboards on the existing Tofino shuttle.
Great. And I see Dave. Good to see you there, Dave. And I see your hand up. Did you have a question or a comment for Seth?
Yeah, more so a comment to everyone. I just want to say how impressed I am with the leadership that the ACRD and BC Transit has taken on regional transportation. And also commend you on the both bilingual and trilingual signage and making sure that neutralness is very apparent in all of our signage and displays. And hopefully this can be a pilot for the rest of the province. So yeah, so more so just a comment, Mr. Steer, and yeah, thank you everyone. Thank you for the update.
Great, thanks, Dave. Appreciate the comments. And Veda, I see your hand up as well.
Hi, thanks again. And through the chair. Um, I was wondering if the province, if BC Transit has any models where they recognize that the existing school bus system limits student participation in after-school activities, and whether there is funding through the school districts that has been set up to supplement the costs of uh, the transportation of students, or whether that just comes out of our provincial taxes as the uh, taxation for schools.
Through your chair, I'm gonna again choose my words carefully because this is another sensitive topic. Um, but I will speak to what is currently in place and what conversations we've had on this topic. Certainly, there is lots of desire from local governments such as yours to see opportunities for contributions from school districts. We have explored those conversations, I would say, in a fairly cursory manner, and do not currently have any funding models that formally contribute from the school district directly to the costs of operating transit. We do have some dedicated school bus service in the Victoria area. The Route 17 is almost exclusively high school bus, effectively the way it operates. We have services that supplement school bus services. We have trans service that effectively replaces school bus service in some communities. And it's a bit of a jigsaw across the province in how they operate. In looking at how our service might operate along the Tofino-Ucluelet corridor, we've identified that the school buses would continue to provide that sort of peak trip in to the school and peak trip home. But for folks that want to participate in extracurricular activities after school, or even might have to go to a different parent's home, the transit bus provides another option to benefit those kids. And so I think that there is an increased flexibility with the transit system, but we expect the school buses to continue to provide that service, and that's sort of the gold standard based on the lack of any formal structures that we've been able to establish anywhere in the province. I would just note that our budgets are challenged, I think school districts also are challenged, and their priorities tend to be in the classroom rather than on the bus, although they do have that requirement to get kids into the schools.
Great, thank you, Seth, for that. I had a couple comments and questions, and just to follow up maybe with as the former PAC chair, our conversations around busing were nonstop, and it is a direct contract with SD70 and whatever service provider they choose to engage with, whether it be by boat or by bus. So that's something Veda to think about as well. We can talk to our SD70 representative back on the coast. I had and I wanted to follow up just with Dave in terms of the importance and the recognition through BC Transit of that trilingual signage. I can't overemphasize how important that is, and especially, and this will lead into the question, the service, and I haven't seen the stop scheduling, but out at our airport lands, which are Tloquit First Nations territories, it's also the site of our potential site of our multiplex society. And I'm wondering if there's conversation in terms of scheduling and bus routing up into those areas, aka the airport lands. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks for the question, Chair Steer. I think that this is something that's been flagged a little bit on the periphery at this point. I would note that we do have an MOU coming to your board, I want to say on September 11th, but I might be confusing it with September 12th. I have a board meeting. It's back to back on September 11th and 12th, so pardon me if I misstated the date. But to your next board meeting for expansion in the next fiscal year, which would be April 2025 to to March 26th. So that expansion would be, I think, is planned pending your approval, pending the board's sign off for January 26th to introduce some expansion hours to further build upon the service schedule we established in March of 2025. And that would be one of the opportunities of expanding the service that we could look at. We'd hope to have some ridership data and some information to be able to present to the board for your consideration and evaluate where it makes the most sense to expand service. But every year we carry out this TIPS 3-year expansion process and can do budgeting and expansion and have those conversations to determine where additional service could be allocated.
Great, thank you for that. And then just the last one, in terms of the selection of that 2024 bus, as a gas engine and some of the conversations we've been having in terms of electrification, I'm not sure, I don't know my buses that well, in terms of the ability to be looking down the road, obviously with a new buy on those 2024s, I suspect, in terms of that capital investment there. But I'm wondering, was there any conversation about electrification in terms of the service, in terms of the vehicle service?
Yeah, thanks again. Another great question. We have over 60 buses coming to us in the next year and a half that will be battery electric buses from Canada's 2 leading bus manufacturers, New Flyer and Nova Bus. We're really excited about these. These will be all heavy duty buses, so they'll be better suited to the larger communities across the province. And those are places where we are better equipped because we own the yard and we can make the significant investment that's required to put in the battery electric bus charging infrastructure. One bus I've heard is equivalent to powering 70 houses, so the charging infrastructure is not insignificant, and the electrical infrastructure is fairly significant for buses. The market, which we're watching very closely, and we have a whole team of engineers that are expert in this field of battery electric bus, are working at procuring buses as the market makes them available, and as we feel comfortable with the technology. We don't want to buy a bus that causes more problems than providing ridership. Our core service is that transportation function, and so while we're very keen on electrification, we're doing so with good business cases along the way. And so we expect that we'll be starting to buy light duty battery electric buses in over 5 years from now, not likely sooner than that. But one of the precursors to moving in that direction will require us to look at establishing charging infrastructure in our yards to be able to support that. So that's a conversation that we'll be having in the coming years. But first, we're doing the very difficult and tricky work of setting up the charging infrastructure in the yards which we own and the yards which our local governments own, which is moving forward quite quickly at this time.
Right, thank you, Seth. And it kind of leads into the question in terms of servicing. Just so you know, we did great electrical upgrades on the West Coast here just recently. We the opening of our wastewater treatment plant. We had BC Hydro there with the big handshake. So we look forward in the next 5 years to maybe seeing that coming up to the coast, and which leads into the servicing. Where will your servicing center for your fleet be? Will it be located on the West Coast or in Port Alberni here?
The servicing facility hasn't been a contract hasn't been signed, so I don't want to say too much about it. But our principal preferred option is located in Ucluelet, and we're very excited about locating it on the West Coast and being able to employ mechanics on the West Coast and being able to support the community that way. It's obviously also a significant cost measure if we have to transport buses to Port Alberni. So we're looking at all options to avoid having to bring buses into Port Alberni to provide that service, and we're looking at keeping the buses on the West Coast as much as possible.
Excellent, thank you. So that's it for me. I'll look up to the committee to see. I don't see any other hands raised. I really want to thank you today for coming. You probably guessed the excitement about however many questions you got. So we really appreciate it. And we'd love to see you again. And once we get this implementation, I think March of 2025, we'll look for that implementation of service, and maybe we'll have a nice little celebration at the same time. So thank you kindly, and take care.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
So looking at our agenda, we did a little move across. I see Samantha here with her colleagues. And so we put Seth first. So thank you. I'm gonna request just a 2-minute bio break. And then I don't know if you have PowerPoint or if you haven't. Okay, great, because we would get our tech people here, but since that's not necessary. So I'm gonna take a 1.5-minute break and I'll be right back. Great. Thank you, everyone. Appreciated that. So next on the agenda then, Samantha Hackett, Alex, and Carrie are here, and they're going to be presenting the West Coast Multiplex Society project update today. We do say we have 10 minutes, but I'll just look at you. I think we have absolutely as much time as you need. Thank you.
Okay, amazing. I was hoping you had said there was a lighter agenda, so I don't think we'll be too much longer, but thanks so much for having us and for your flexibility today as well, as we drive from the West Coast here to join you, and some of you in person and some of you online. Hi, everyone. I'm Samantha Hackett. I think I actually do know everybody. I'm the chair of the West Coast Multiplex Society. Nice to see all the familiar faces of the West Coast Committee. We won't be going too much into some of the details and history because you all are very in the loop. I wasn't sure, depending on who was going to be joining us, whether we go into some of that. So just want to acknowledge before we get started our 5 First Nations communities that are part of this project: Heshquieta, Howzit, Cloquiet, Tuquathot, and Toquat, in the spirit of truth, healing, and reconciliation. And we thank them so much for the support and for this project. And that's over almost, we're going on, it'll be 30 years in a couple of years for this dream and for this project. So with me today, I have Carrie Ho, who is our treasurer for the society, and Alex Masso, who is our vice chair. And so you have three of our, we have 11 directors right now, 11 volunteers on the board, but it has been, of course, everybody that's been part of the project for the 25 plus years, all volunteers pushing this forward. So I'm going to pass it to start with Alex.
Thanks, Sam. Hi, everybody. I'm Alex Masso. I'm from the Colloquiet First Nation. I actually grew up in Port Alberni here. Went to high school here and played a lot of basketball and sports here. Used the multiplex, also played lacrosse there. And yeah, I've had a basketball group that I've had going for 23 years at the Alberni Athletic Hall. We run every Sunday and Wednesday. We're playing tonight, actually. So very passionate about sports. Always have been, and have been on the board now for over 3 years, and very happy to be here, and just looking to push this project forward and do whatever we can to help make it happen for the West Coast. I manage a construction company right now for the Colloquiet First Nation. We have a company out there, and we do some projects. We did the campground and other small projects. So yeah, just really excited to help push this project forward and be a part of something so great for the West Coast. Thanks for your time.
Hello, I think I know most of you as well. I'm Carrie Ho. I have been living in Ucluelet for the last 12 years. And I'm not too much into sports, but I like swimming and skating. And when I moved here, I brought my skates, and I was surprised to see that there's no facility on the West Coast. So that's why I joined the board, and hopefully to help bring this facility so that all the residents can use it for their health and wellness. I want to give a little bit of update what we have been up to the last few years, and some of the information might not be new to everyone. One of the things that we've done is we have a new logo. We were working with a Colloquiet artist, Yelmer Wenstop, with the new logo, because we want to recognize that it's all 8 communities, Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities, trying to bring this together. So the logo has 2 canoes going side by side that represent all 8 communities working together. And then there's a mountain and the water in front that sort of showcase the area that we're in. And then also the rising sun to look for a brighter future. So we're very excited about this logo. We're very excited to be working with Colloquiet more, because it is their traditional territory that the future facility will be on. So part of the work that we've been doing with the Colloquiet is also the language piece. So we have a working title for the facility. It's Hijasakui, and it means an indoor place for every purpose. And this is how we envision the facility. It's not just for recreation, it's not just for sports. We want people to gather together for connection as well, for any health and wellness related activity. So we have been also communicating with a lot of community partners to see where there might be collaboration opportunities. We have talked to parks, we have talked to Island Health, we have talked to school district, and also the local nonprofits as well, like the Art Society or the historical societies, to see if there's any opportunities to see if we can collaborate and how we can make the space a truly community facility that everyone can attend. We've also talked to a lot of youth groups and also seniors group as well, because they are one of the most vulnerable populations that we want to serve. And I'm sure you all have read the vital signs report that came out earlier this year from CBT, that mentioned that there's really a lack of sports and recreation opportunities on the West Coast. and an indoor facility was named as one of the priority in that report. And we've also most recently talked to a group that wanted to also utilize that space for high performance surf center that could also bring in like a gym sort of facility, not just for athletes, any type of athletes, surf athletes, or basketball athletes, or people practicing for canoe journeys, but also for anyone to use to want to work on their health and wellness. So it's not just athletic facility. We want to bring that in for possible like tourism or economic opportunities, but ultimately the facility would be a community facility that everyone can access and use to how they want it. We've also talked to the local agency ADAPS, who have won the contract to put a satellite boundary office on the West Coast. They're a few years away, but we have been exploring all opportunities and trying to talk to everyone that provides services in the region to make sure that we are collaborating as much as possible. The other things that we've been busy working on is also looking for grant opportunities and talking to private donors to keep the project going. So a lot of the planning work, including the feasibility studies, are funded by private donors right now. And we have a few, really strong supporters that have been supporting our projects. And we want to foster that relationship and making sure that it is a long-term partnership. We've also been looking for different government grants that can support the facility, and there's one that's open actually just today, the Green and Inclusive Community Building Grant that we are looking to apply to help raise the majority of the fund to build this facility. And we're not only looking for grants and talking to donors about the capital costs, we're also talking to them about operating costs as well, because we want to make sure that it minimizes the impact to taxpayers in the ACRD and Euclid and Tofino area, to make sure that that's less impactful for the taxpayers. We want to identify other sort of operating grant opportunities and also partnership with donors. One of the things that we're looking at is to see if there's any way we can secure a funding source privately to ensure all the youth and seniors can access the facilities for free. Again, because they're the most vulnerable group of people that could benefit from the facility. And I think that's it for my part. I'll pass it to Sam.
Thank you. So with all of that, one of the things we really wanted to, talk to, of course, the West Coast Committee specifically about, is the relationship and the tie-in that the society, this project, and the ACRD have. And it's evolved over the years. Obviously, we have the referendum in place that was very much a project with the ACRD and partners. And from that, that actual bylaw, when the referendum came into place, there was an amount of money that was secured budgeted for within that referendum that the ACRD was able to use for staff time to support the project. As I mentioned, being all volunteers and it being a society, it's been something that that the project, I think, struggles and it's a big project. That's why it takes this long, but it's an additional piece of 8 communities. It shouldn't land on any one community to have to drive this forward. And so the society was very smartly formed to be able to make sure that it didn't fall the responsibility on one community. But having a bit of budget through the ACRD, through that referendum, it went up until I think it was about 2018. And then that budget was put to zero. So we haven't actually seen the ACRD being able to put any staff time, any funds towards it to be able to help the project forward and work on that partnership. So that was one thing that we wanted to sort of see if that was something we could explore over this next budget cycle going into next year. That would greatly benefit not only the project, but just the conversations happening around recreation that was talked about last year was a regional recreation conversation that didn't happen, which I don't necessarily think it's a needed conversation. Those conversations are happening within each community regularly. You all as elected officials know exactly what those conversations are in each community. And you know what the needs and you see the bigger picture as the elected for your community. And so, being able to bring those conversations that are happening in community really just to the West Coast Committee table and then to the ACRD, I think that's a great place for those conversations to be happening and that leadership to take place. And as we go forward, looking at it's such a great tie-in, the transit being talked about today. I remember when I joined 10 years ago, the society, talking about everyone saying, oh, it's not accessible unless there's a bus system. And so everyone's saying, well, if we get the multiplex, it will create a need to create a regional bus system. And so to actually have the bus system already in place, and then even to be increased service over these next few years will be amazing piece that now we have the transportation to have the facility be built and already have that in place is significant. So it's pretty cool to see what's happening. Economic development with the airport lands, and I know the conversations happening and the partnership with conversations about the land with Taloquit and looking what those economic development opportunities are. This is significant. It's one of the things that, coming from, for myself, a tourism background, being able to diversify the West Coast with something like recreation that has really good jobs, unique jobs with it. A lot of facilities, whether it's more of a community facility, a community center, or a gymnasium, it's not a lot of jobs. They're not very diverse jobs. Something like an arena, pool, a high performance surf aspect, all of these things, working with the school district, these are going to be really unique jobs. It's going to be really, really amazing economic development for the West Coast and for Taloquit specifically, which is why through all of our business planning, feasibility studies, it's always been that partnership of looking to make sure that Taloquit is really the owner operator of the facility to make sure that that the economic development opportunities are there for them as a priority. So for our next steps, obviously the what I mentioned about the budget and the referendum piece would be one of our asks if that's something, and that's something I know timing wise we can talk about it at another. We're happy to come back to another West Coast Committee meeting to see what that looks like or work with staff on that. And like I said, you can look back in past years, there was budget every year up until, and I believe it was 2018, of what that looks like. The other two pieces that are coming up, and they are more time constrained, is, as Carrie mentioned, the GICB grant, so the Green Inclusive Community Buildings Grant. It's a grant that, if you're familiar with it, I believe there's been multiple applications from different communities and maybe even from the ACRD. There's been different iterations of it, different opportunities. The society can apply as the applicant, which we are open to doing if the communities don't want to apply themselves. Taloquit has been an applicant in the past, but they're, I think, at the sort of point of, they can't be taking the lead on this over and over again. There's got to be a little bit more support coming from the community. So they're quite happy to support. When we did a delegation in June to support it, but they've got other priorities and are not wanting to necessarily take the lead. And so the society, being the lead applicant, would just be needing a letter of support from different community partners. Definitely the West Coast Committee, the ACRD letter of support for the Green Inclusive Buildings Grant would be what our other ask would be of today. That specifically, that grant was the one that CBT applied for and received last year. And that was something we didn't apply last year because they were applying timing wise. We were working on our design costing report for the full facility, which we have our Class D estimate right now. And we're looking at, just because of the timeline, we can't get a full Class C estimate by the deadline. They have confirmed when Carrie did the information session, they have confirmed they're not looking for shovel-ready Class C estimates for the grant. It can be Class D and even less. So we are actually further along, but we are looking at getting a little bit more costing details done. We're going to have that report by the end of September, and that will have not quite Class C, but more absolute numbers than a Class D estimate, which will be really nice to have. And then we already have the business plan and all the other supporting documents. And then the other piece of that is that the Green Inclusive Community Building Grant Program is also connected to UBCM. So timing wise with UBCM happening very soon, just wanting to make sure that this is something that's on everybody's radar. We've had some amazing conversations with Minister Popham talking about the project itself and really where the provincial government wants to be able to partner is with the high performance surf aspect. A community facility everywhere across Canada has arenas, pools, community facilities, but what really can set this facility apart and give ourselves that provincial and national, Canadian and international attention is that high performance, that unique aspect of why is this facility different than any other facility. Obviously for our residents, it's important just as a basic facility, but just bringing that additional element to it. So I think that covers everything that we wanted to go over. Have I missed anything? Thanks so much for your time and consideration.
Great. Thanks, Sam. Super appreciate it. I'll look up to the committee to see if there's any questions or comments. And I don't see any hands up. I have a couple. I wanted to thank you once again for your persistence in terms of educating the different, as you mentioned, 8 different community. It is a service of the ACRD, so to keep us informed as well, I think is critically important. So thank you very much for that. And I did do a quick shout out for the golf fundraiser. That's I was going to say Stick in the Mud. I know the changes the name, but that's coming up real soon. So I just wanted to throw that out there before I forgot. Another fundraiser that's been going on, I'm going to say, for a long time. But anyway, and the High Performance Sports Center, thank you for presenting both Ucluelet and Tofino letters of support for that facility. My Coach Brown, who presented, just coming back from the Olympics when he presented there. I think, as you pointed out, there's great significance locally or regionally, but also I think, as you pointed out, at a much at that 30,000 foot level, which would set us in a unique position. My son benefited from the involvement of Coach Brown over the years in terms of his engagement with the region, not just the community. So thank you for that. There was a couple of requests, and as a West Coast committee, I'm going to look up to the committee. Maybe I'll start with the first one, the letter of support for the Green Inclusive Grant. And I'm just going to maybe look to Heather if a motion would be necessary for a recommendation from the West Coast Committee to the board. I believe our board meeting's the 11th.
That's correct.
Thank
That
you.
would be appropriate.
Okay, so maybe I'll move from the chair that a letter of support, and I'll let you maybe wordsmith a bit, but a letter of support from for the Green Inclusive Grant for the Multiplex Society recommendation to the board. And second it, thank you. I think everyone put their hand up there, Director McEwen. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, motion carried. And then on to the second item that you had mentioned, and maybe a little more complex in terms of how we might navigate that one. Because it's always into budget season, just one ends and then the other one begins. So part of that conversation in terms of that request, it wasn't specific in terms, or maybe I didn't hear, in terms of looking at some of that form of allocation. Would it be budgeting for staff support, ACRD staff support, or is there something else that I may have missed?
That's what it was previously. There might be another aspect of it that we should or could be considering, but that was what we found very helpful, was just having that constant contact of, just something to kind of have a home for it, so that it wasn't living with the society and that we could always, for a frame of reference, Russell Dyson had contracted Scott Kenny, who's a Port Alberni recreation person. I didn't know him prior to Russell contracting him, but that's who they basically gave him that budget contract. And he attended all of our board meetings. He just helped us navigate some of the different things. He gave updates to the ACRD on our behalf, so that we weren't having to figure it out within our working schedules. It was that middle person between everybody. So there might be a different way to structure it now, and there might be a better use for it. But that was sort of, and Russell always had said that they can't put staff time to it unless it's in the budget. And so he had always said, it's got to be in the budget if you want us to basically answer your phone call. So every time Samantha calls, they were able to put staff time towards it. And I used to call more often. So.
Okay, thank you. That helps. And I might look to staff, and I don't know, Jenny, if you have comment on that, or if there's a way that we might be able to navigate that. I think I understand now where you're going with that. And so, Jenny, I see you got.
I'll speak briefly, but I was hoping Terry might pop on because she has a lot of history with this. I think that, of course, we can always consider additions to the budget, and what might be helpful, and I'll let Terry expand on this because she has so much history, is if, from a staff perspective, if we're going to be presenting to the board for consideration for inclusion, getting maybe a written explanation of what the things are that you're looking for and that you need support for, and then we can look at options on funding that, whether that's staff time, consultant, like really trying to see what it is that you need. And then we could present that to the board as options, assuming that we have the ability under our service establishment bylaw. And I'll pass that over to Terry to answer.
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. So yeah, the establishing bylaw does talk about establishing and operating a service for public recreation. I think where we had stopped funding it was really, it talks about operating a multiplex facility, and with no facility, the directors at the time weren't feeling overly comfortable to still have tax dollars be allocated towards it, which, as I trained Russell very well. And yes, if we want to spend time on something, we do need to have a budget for staff time in there. So as Jenny stated, like having a bit of like the bones of a work plan of what the committee, or what the society, sorry, is looking to accomplish in 2025 will give us a great starting point to have that discussion during the financial planning exciting time at the regional district. So Samantha, maybe I'll reach out to you and we can kind of coordinate from there. And then if we're wanting some outside stuff as well, like in terms of whether we're going to do it internally with our own staff, or if we're going to use a contract model like we had with Scott Kenny previously. So that would be great.
Thank you, Terry. I forgot that you were on the screen because I knew that you were the person that we would be referring to eventually. So thank you. Samantha, I think that is a great path forward. You got clear definition of what you need to do. So great. So I want to really thank you guys once again for making the trip from the West Coast in person. I think it's really important for us to continue that conversation. And we'll get that, it'll be on the agenda for our upcoming board meeting here. So excellent. Thank you so much. And I'm sure we'll see you back home. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Carrie. Appreciate it. So further with the agenda now, item 6, correspondence, Clackwood Biosphere Trust, their 2023 annual report. I don't know if committee has any comments regarding that. I just wanted to maybe just point out some of the, once again, super important, and some of the highlights on there for me. I wanted to point out almost $1 million granted into the region through research programs and education awards. And just a sidebar, my youngest son was the recipient of this year's CBT Education Award. So once again, I thank you, CBT, for that. He'll be pursuing his post-secondary education and wildlife ecology up at UNBC. And thank you, CBT, for helping to make that possible. And I did, once again, a little shout out some of those highlights within the report of the new Biosphere Center, of course. The detailed designs are coming up. It looks fantastic. Everyone's familiar, as was pointed out, the vital signs report, the 5th one. We know how incredibly important that piece of documentation is for a lot of the, a lot of the data that's contained in there. We reference it all the time, and I think we even heard it referenced in our conversation around transit. And then there was also the Truth, Honor, and the Way Forward exhibit that was at Ucluelet Secondary School, and then at the Tourism Tofino. This was an incredible exhibit. It was in recognition of the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Over 1,000 people were there. It was really quite moving, and I just wanted a shout out for that as well. The CBT were involved in some of the work that was involved there. So I don't know if the rest of the committee has any comments, but I just wanted to point that out through that report. And Rebecca sent a letter to us as well as to the board at the ACRD. So seeing none, I move on to item number 7, our request for decision of the West Coast Compost Sort and Grow. And I knew Jenny was here. I thought she just wanted to say hi to us, but now I remember that she did have a report that she'd be speaking on. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it is my honor to provide yet another excellent update on our West Coast organics. So as a reminder to everyone, we have constructed a compost processing facility on the West Coast. And we actually just finished the covered buildings this summer, so that's good. Everything's in place, and we're doing some minor upgrades just to allow for compost loading for residents. The 3-stream organics program, which we expanded into our First Nation communities and we have across the West Coast, has been extremely successful. In the last year, we collected over 300 tons of yard waste and over 300 tons of food waste. We've been blending that and processing that at the facility, at the landfill. And we are ready with compost. We have Class A compost, and that's pretty exciting. In the report, you will see a sneak peek of what is also just an excellent partnership. So we've been working with Ocean Legacy for a very long time. They are removing rope and other, ocean plastics, which are the most difficult to recycle. They have a facility in Vancouver. They take those, clean those, and have been creating a product that they're trying to find a use for, because a full circular economy doesn't exist until you have something at the end of the day. So we have created buckets with this plastic that has been collected in our neighborhood. So we collect it in our backyard and we're going to bring it back in these lovely green buckets. I love the name. It's Sort and Grow to celebrate our Sort and Go program. So very cute. The buckets are, 20 liters. Some people really want bigger kitchen catchers. So we think people use them for that, or just as a multi-purpose bucket around your yard. So the buckets themselves, we're proposing that we will basically try and just break even. So they'll cover the cost of production and you'll get it full of compost, and that'll be great. And when I say compost, a key thing that we're going to be promoting and reminding people is that this is not a blended product. So it is very nutrient dense, which is great. You're getting more for your money. But it's an amendment. So make sure you do blend it with some soil, 4-to-1, and take it home. You will grow the best tomatoes ever. So in order to do this, we do need to sell the compost. We're proposing $50 per yard, or $5 for if you bring your own bucket, and then you can buy the Sort and Grow bucket for $20. We're going to be doing a launch later in September, and we attached a little poster, but they'll be changed as we go, but we've got some good promotional material. We do need to create a fee in the bylaw, so we are asking the board to recommend to the regional district to update our bylaw to implement those rates. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Great, thank you, Jenny. It is very exciting. And who came up with Sort and Grow anyways? It is very cute.
You have to give credit where credit is due. Jody thought that up, which is fantastic.
Great. I'll look up to the committee, and I see Lavana as online there too. So welcome. I'll look there. No hands coming up. I do have one quick question regarding, as you know, with our wastewater treatment plant in Tofino coming online, and the question of the biosolids. I was just curious, with the biosolids eventually coming out to the landfill. I'm wondering, will that be part of the organics? I don't know if there's any technical issues with biosolids coming into a Class A system. So just quick question around that.
Excellent question. Happy to update about that too, because the plant is online and we've started receiving material. And there's a lot of unknowns when you've got a new plant. And so I will let you know that so far we're pretty happy with the product. It is can be pretty wet, but we are not getting a super wet product, which is very helpful for processing. So we're keeping the two systems completely separate for a number of reasons. We want to sell lots of the sort and grow product, and we don't want anyone who might have hesitations of using biosolids to make that a decision factor for them. So we are keeping the system separate. We're going to see how it goes. The yard waste and kitchen scrap compost that we've created is Class A. Like, it is great stuff. We will compost the biosolids and see where it goes. We're keeping it up on the back of the landfill for right now because we have space to do the composting. And we can use it on site. So we can actually probably use all of that material when it's said and done for final cover. And that's a good use for it. However, depending on demand on the West Coast and a marketing for a biosolid, we will see if there is demand or interest for actually selling or utilizing those biosolids. So that'll be next year or 2 years down the line, and we'll give the committee an update on how that's going.
Great. Thank you, Jenny. I appreciate that. Yeah, it was one of the questions that had come up locally as well. So separate it for now. Well, certainly as a final cover, we know that it'll be a useful product there for sure. And then potentially down the road, we may see a market that nobody's created yet, except because we're innovators on the West Coast. Great. So there is a motion on the table. Maybe I'll just read from the chair that the West Coast Committee recommends that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors approve amending bylaw R1033 West Coast landfill tipping fee and regulation to include purchase of compost at rates of $50 per yard, $5 for a 20-liter bucket, and $20 for a sort and grow bucket. The seconder, thank you, Marilyn. Director McEwen. I just had one final comment on that in terms of I know that we certainly don't want to compete with other potential businesses, and that $50 per yard is within the realm of, so we're not undercutting potentially others, but at the same time we certainly want to be able to provide our locals with that circular economy in some ways.
That is correct. The rate compares well with the Earthland and Sea rate of $68 a yard, but that actually is blended material. So another opportunity for independent businesses. So if there's garden centers or anyone locally who wants to buy the sort and grow and then blend it and sell the material as a garden ready product, there's lots of opportunities there. And we will watch the market. If there's higher demand, maybe we want to increase that because this does offset tipping fees and tax implications for the region. Or if we can't sell it, then we will have to reduce the price. So it is to go back to the community in its best form possible.
Great. Thanks, Jenny. Appreciate it. I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, motion carried. Oh, sorry, Kristen, did you have, oh, I can't even see it. It's in the corner. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I actually did have a question about that $20 bucket. So you get the bucket with the stuff in it. So if you bring that back, would that be $5 afterwards to refill it?
Correct.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. I'm sorry, Kristen. I can't, the glow on the top corner there with the hand. I'm sorry. Thank you. It's a good deal, isn't it? Great. So that motion was, yes, thank you. Now moving on to the last part of almost last part of our agenda, reports. We have our ex officio members. I did see Dave online. Pacific Rim National Park update. Dave, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a couple quick updates from the Pacific Rim National Park Reserve. So we're working on a continued long-term lease for our maintenance operation properties on the ACRD airport land. So we're working with Jenny and also seeking colloquiate's support for a longer-term lease. So more information to come, but I just wanted to share that with the committee. Point number 2 is just kind of an update on the Upshiktashi, so the multi-use path that goes through the National Park Reserve. As I know, all districts now have a multi-use path, and We are, for our day-to-day or annual maintenance, if you want to call it that, we've actually contracted it out through contribution agreements to both Colloquiate and Uthulafat to do some of the day-to-day maintenance that's required on this multi-use path. So I thought if anyone's interested in how we go about that and what the statement of work was, and Alex Masso, who was one of the presenters for the West Coast Committee, is one of the partners from Colloquiate. So I just wanted to share that with the committee, just in case you're wondering how to maintain your own pass, and if you're wondering how Parks Canada, please reach out to me and we can have those discussions. And then lastly, Chair, just well, I guess one quick one. A lot of students have left over the last couple of weeks, so we're entering into our last couple of months of our peak operations, and but of course, we have some students that have left already, but we're still seeing high visitation levels, so that's great to see across all 3 units. And then the final item is just an update on the Pacific Rim National Park Reserve Management Plan. So just to give you an update of where we're at. For Kirsten, for the Broken Grip Islands part of the management plan, we're still in the infancy, so we're in the state of the park planning part, and the same with the Long Beach Nations. So Colloquiate and Uthulafat, we're at the state of, which is kind of an assessment of where we're currently at, and making sure that the Colonial Parks Canada view is the same as the First Nations, and how do we blend both Western science and traditional and current knowledge as well. The West Coast Trail Nations are a little bit further ahead. There we're actually in the drafting of, we completed the scoping session and we're starting the drafting. And as I've mentioned before, there will be multiple opportunities for public outreach and open houses and online sessions on how the communities and the public and visitors can provide input into this planning session as we go through the various phases. So those are my 4 updates, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. I don't know if there's any questions or comments from the board or the committees. I don't see any. Just a quick one, Dave. Anecdotally, and I know because you're probably the data's not in yet. Anecdotally, what is your feeling in terms of the numbers coming through the park this year? I'm just trying to get a sense overall in the region between Tofino, Ucluelet, and the park, how the season was.
I do not have the August numbers yet. Those should be coming to my desk fairly soon. But up until the end of July, it was. Oh, no, I don't want to state anything. It's fairly decent numbers. I can share it with the directors afterwards. I can get the actual numbers and share it. And if you want to attach it to the minutes or however you want to share those are public numbers. I can share that afterwards. But I don't want to misspeak. But they're fairly stable. But because we've had so much flux from between 2019 and 2020 and 2021, we're actually increased visitation, even though it was COVID years. And then last year was actually quite a decrease in visitation. So I don't want to misspeak, but I can share those numbers after, Chair.
Great, thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. So I'll look to the rest of, I don't see any online, but maybe I'll just quickly look at Heather. How's it, Colloquiate and Heshquit, potential updates, and I'm looking, Heather shaking her head, so no representation there. This particular committee meeting. So I will move from the chair that the West Coast Committee received the verbal reports. Thank you for that, Director McEwen, for seconding. All those in favor? Seeing that opposed, motion carried. Late business, I don't believe there is any. I don't know if there's going to be any questions because I don't know how many participants have joined us and not in the gallery anymore.
So I'm just looking in the email. There's no questions there, and I'm just going to check on Zoom. And there are no questions there.
Great, thank you, Heather. Because it is my privilege, I can adjourn the meeting. I don't even have to ask for permission from anybody or get seconded or anything. So thank you, everybody, for coming today online and well, us here in the room. So thanks so much, everyone. We'll see you in a few months, I guess. So, well, I'll see you at the ACRD board meeting, but in our next West Coast Committee meeting. Take care, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.